scars, say these wounds. Old men forget, yet all shall be forgotten. For he today who sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Got a question for you. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Big House of CFB Nation. How are you? I'm Andy, and we're back again with another episode. So let's get right into it. Let's take a look back at week one. Now, with the Fresno State game, it brought a lot of interesting details that we kind of have to break down. First and foremost is the quarterback position. Once we had the spring game, to me, Davis Warren looked like the better passer, but the better upside was Alex Orji. So it was going to be interesting to see what happened throughout fall camp. We heard rumblings throughout fall camp that both quarterbacks were throwing the ball well, that Orji was, kind of hitting his stride and getting better. But one interesting remark was when the news came out that if he doesn't start, they will still have packages for him. And as soon as that came out, that was a big red flag. I kind of knew then that Davis Warren would be the guy. And kind of like how I said after the spring game with Davis Warren, it's a great story, overcoming cancer, being that walk-on, staying for 4, 5, 6 years within that program, and just, waiting his turn, working, just doing whatever he needs to do for the program, and he gets to become the starter for the season. And when you kind of break it down, he is the much better passer between the two, and that is the typical mission quarterback, that quarterback where you manage the game, don't turn over, you don't make mistakes, you don't cost the team. And really all they ask of you is to make key third down completions, get the chains moving, and then just pretty much eat up some clock and play defense. Now, when I looked at the Fresno State game, I looked at Warren up close, and I kind of watched the game a couple of times with different aspects that I wanted to take a look at. And I thought he looked okay. He did come out with some jitters. He had that interception that I'm sure he wants to have back. But throughout the day, he looked fine. And for his first start, I thought it was okay. There are some things to improve, but I kind of see that with the entire landscape of college football. We saw a lot of high-profile schools kind of struggle the first week. And I think that has to do with this day and age of the NIL world. You can't really coach a kid hard because if they don't like it, they'll enter the portal. So in this day and age, you kind of have to baby them. And because of that, you're not going to be crisp. You're not going to be sharp week one. And so that is kind of something that I want people to kind of take away with this. And another thing that I want people to take away with this is if the mission schedule was different, if week 2, game 2 wasn't Texas and it was Arkansas State, I think Alex Orji might have been the guy to start week 1, but because you had Texas coming up at week 2, you couldn't really afford to have the rawness that is Alex Orji come on in. And if we kind of transition over to Alex Orji, he's not the most refined passer. He never will be. He's simply just too raw right now to be given the keys to the program. So you bring him in for packages. You have the RPOs, you have the Wildcat option, bring him in on 3rd and 2, make Texas kind of figure out what you're going to do. And then I think that's really the best way to get Orji involved. And then if there are some stumbling blocks where you lose a couple of games along the way, and then I think you can kind of turn to Orji at that time. Next, I kind of want to talk about the running back usage here. Now, we saw with Khalil Mullins, he kind of rotated in. He looked really good. We saw Donovan Edwards get the receiving touchdown early, but kind of more of the same with Donovan Edwards. Kind of struggled, on the ground in between tackles. And the offensive line didn't really help him at all. It looked like five new starters who had never played a meaningful game together. They weren't very good. And we're talking about a Fresno State front four that, you outweighed and you should have outmanned and you should have manhandled, and they simply didn't. It was kind of surprising to see Mullins also return kickoffs and punts. And I think with that kind of emergence of him, I think with this backfield, I think it could very well be a 50-50 split. Kind of have to see what happens in the Texas game. We know that with Donovan Edwards, he shines when the lights are on. And so I kind of want to talk about the passing game from this past week. And with the Fresno State game, I kind of want to see who would step up besides Colson Loveland. And what we saw was Colson Loveland. He looked great. Colson Loveland was pretty much the entire passing game. The receivers didn't really do much. They couldn't really separate. They couldn't really get open. They had troubles getting off their line. It just wasn't the greatest. I think that might bring some issues, coming up this season. I really do think that they need to get Donovan Edwards involved more in the passing game, even get Martin Klein, the tight end 2, more involved. And then from there, you kind of open up some passing windows, open up some passing lanes. I want to see some, quick short passes to Samaj Morin, to Frederick Moore, to Tyler Morris. Kind of get these guys involved, kind of get these guys into the game, into the rhythm, where you get them, the ball short and have them work. And I kind of want to see that for, this upcoming week. And with Colson Loveland, when we go back to that game, he looked great. He looked like that first round pick that he's going to be next spring, and, as we transition over to the defensive side against Fresno State, I thought the defense looked great. That defense is going to carry the team to multiple wins. It's that mission recipe. You're going to kind of focus on your defense, have a strong defense, and then, don't make mistakes on offense. Slowly outlast the opposing team, and then you finally put them away in the fourth quarter. That's been the mission recipe for years. It wasn't until JJ McCarthy kind of came into the picture where you kind of saw them open it up more at times. But with this kind of offensive play and with this whole team, that's kind of that mission recipe that we've seen from, generations. And then, when I'm taking a look at that defense, I thought Will Johnson looked really good. I thought it was interesting that Wink Martindale rotated the corners. You saw Johnson and Jair Hill they were subbed out for multiple plays and essentially for most of some series until they kind of were struggling where they gave up some big passes and then they put them back in. I think that's really interesting and something that I kind of want to talk about a little bit. Is that something that's going to kind of happen throughout the season? We heard all fall camp that Mission, they really liked their secondary. They really liked, they felt they were 4 deep at the corner spot. And I really thought it was a lot of just, talk, just a lot of smoke. I really thought that it would be Will Johnson and Jair Hill out there. And then with that nickel spot, you would kind of rotate in. But when we saw the second unit on with the corners in, they struggled. And I just don't think you have time to do that next week with Texas coming up. And so that's something that I kind of am going to be looking forward to seeing in the Texas game and seeing what happens if they continue to do that. Or was it more of first game of the season, conditioning? You don't want to overexert themselves for Texas, so you kind of give them a break. I'm hoping that's what it was, but I think at the end of the day, that defense looked good. The defense played well. The offense has a lot of work to do to kind of get improved. And then at the end, we saw Will Johnson make a very nice play, with that pick 6 that kind of sealed them the game. And when we take a look at the Mission defense, that defense will lead them to 8 wins. It's the rest of the 4 games, the offense is going to have to do something. And one of those 4 games is the game that we're going to talk about next. And let's kind of preview game 2, and that's going to be Texas. With Texas, they're coming off a great win against Colorado State. They didn't really do much. The starters, they were kind of out by halftime. And so Quinn Ewers, I thought he looked good. He was able to complete some deep passes. He was very decisive with where he wanted to take the ball. Jadon Blue didn't get as much work as I think a lot of people thought. True freshman Jarrett Gibson, he was the leader, but a lot of it was in the second half with the reserves. My main concern with Texas and what they have is going to be in that passing game. With Isaiah Bond, with Matthew Golden. We heard Matthew Golden all off season that he was running with the twos, running with the threes, but he came out with a starting lineup, got 2 touchdowns. So it will be interesting to see how that rotation, kind of shakes up. With Coach Sark, he's talked about that he wanted to rotate guys in and that there would really be no true 2 receivers that are going to be starting and playing 95% of snaps like we saw last year. They also have Jonte Cook, that exciting sophomore, and then Ryan Wingo, the true freshman. He got 4 receptions for 70 yards for his first game. I thought that was pretty good. A lot of it did come in the second half as well. But as we kind of take a look at the Michigan defense and how they're going to stack up against this Texas juggernaut of an offense, I think the key for the defense, they have to get timely stops. They can't let Texas kind of march down and do 5, 6, 7, 8-minute drives. That you really can't do that. You really need to get some timely stops. You really need to pressure Quinn Ewers. We've seen throughout Quinn Ewers' careers that when he gets pressured, he wilts. He will make, costly mistakes. He will turn the ball over. He will take a sack instead of throwing the ball away. We've seen that. That's on his tape. So with the front four, they need to get pressure. They need to get the edge rushers going. They need to kind of scheme them up. And this is the type of game that Wink Martindale excels at. Him coming from that NFL background with Quinn Ewers getting a lot of hype about being a first-round draft pick. Isaiah Bond's gotten hype as being a first-round draft pick kind of a guy. Matthew Golden's got some buzz. Jonte Cook is a very exciting 5-star sophomore. And then, with Ryan Wingo, a high-level 4-star prospect. This is the kind of game that you went and you got Wink Martindale for his defense, for his schemes, do different packages. And I'm really excited to see what the front four is going to do. The next concern is going to be Jair Hill. He's going to get picked on. This is a game that he's going to have to kind of step up. He's going to have to prove that he belongs as a starter, because I really do believe that Isaiah Bond is going to be moved around. I don't think Sark wants Bond to be lined up right across from Will Johnson the entire game. So I expect him to kind of motion him, get him in the slot, moving around, get him free releases, and to kind of do some damage that way. And then you can have Matthew Golden kind of work the short to intermediate levels. And then, you kind of have to work that run game. Texas wasn't able to do that much against Colorado State. They got up to a big lead, and then the game just got out of hand. And what you saw last week from Texas, I really don't think that's what you're going to see week in and week out. It was more just that inferior competition. So I do think Jadon Blue is going to be more involved in this game. I think he's going to get probably around 15, 20 carries. I think Texas will want to control the time of possession to kind of wear down that defense, to kind of tire them out, and to make the Michigan offense kind of have to score points. And that kind of leads me to my next concern, is that when we go over to the offensive side, the offensive line is going to have to somehow play a lot better. They had trouble and issues with Fresno State. I mean, we just can't have that. Fresno State, these are guys that are 2 stars, 1 star. They weigh 230, 220 pounds. At the offensive line, you're 280, 290. You should be mauling these guys, and they simply didn't do that. So I'm hoping with this week's of practice that they get a little bit more cohesive. They are a little bit better. And for the offense, someone besides Colson Loveland has to step up that passing game. And I'm thinking it's going to be Morgan. I think he's going to get involved, scheme him up short, kind of get him involved early. And then, like I said earlier, in the big games, Donovan Edwards, he comes to life. So I expect him to have at least 1 touchdown. I expect expect him to have a big run, and he's going to get a handful of catches. I kind of want to see how they use Alex Orji. We heard Coach Moore say that, he is going to be more involved as the season goes on. I really do think this is Davis Warren's team. I don't think that Orji's going to take over. I just don't think he's ready for it. I just don't think he is polished enough. So I want to see Orji come out there in the RPO, in the Wildcat kind of a system, and just go all out. Orji in the offseason, he said that this game was important to him. He is from Texas. So for the University of Texas to come into the big house, this is going to be a big game for him. So I'm also excited to see what he does. How does Colson Loveland do? Is Texas going to double team him? We saw Colson Loveland. He was in line. They also, brought him out away from the line to kind of free him up. So it'll be a very fun game to watch. It is the morning game on Fox. So everyone tune on in. It's going to be a great game. And what's going to happen? I think it's going to be tough. I think Texas is a very good team. I think they're very tough. I think if in the first half, if it's a low scoring game, if it's maybe 14, 13 combined points at halftime, I think Michigan's got a good chance. But if it's like 21-14, 21-17 at halftime, I don't think that Michigan offense has enough power to kind of keep up with Texas. So I think that's the big thing to watch. At the end of the day, even with the big house rocking, even with Michigan winning 16 games in a row, I think it's going to be tough. I think Texas, at the end of the day, is a little bit better overall. I think everyone knows that this is going to be a down year for Michigan. I think Michigan's defense is going to fight, and they're going to play, and they're going to give it their all. But I think at the end of the day, that Michigan offense is going to be the weakness for the team. And I think that's going to be the cause of their loss this week against Texas. So thank you for tuning in to another episode of Welcome to the Big House. A special thank you to Dwight Peoples for the intro, Nino Brown for producing, and the entire CFB Nation family. Until next week, who's got better than the CFB Nation?
Got a question for you. Who's got it better than us? No way!